Okay, so some of you saw my Facebook post a couple days ago where I asked what languages everyone spoke, and I got a lot of really cool replies back: Russian, Spanish, Italian, ASL, sarcasm, um, sarcasm. I can accept that on social media that has become its own dialect, but it's not going to be a language I'm going to focus on. And a lot of people, I also got the comment, what program I'm going to use, what software I'm going to use, and I'm not. I have Duolingo, and there's a couple of other websites I'm going to look at, but I'm not going to invest in Rosetta Stone. I'm not going to try all of these programs because I believe it's counterproductive. I'm going to learn grammar, I'm going to learn vocabulary, but the one thing I found consistently, whether I was in the MTC, whether I was talking to my older brother who went through the Air Force Linguistic School in California, Benny Lewis, the Irish polyglot, or the Babel brothers who each know like 9 languages, and it's psychotic. What they all had in common was immersion, the opportunity to speak it, make mistakes, talk horribly about it, but being able to bridge that line of communication. In one form or another, everyone spoke about how people fear using a language because they haven't reached that magical level where a sky fairy comes down, presents them with a certificate, and says, "Now you may speak to the natives," which just doesn't exist. Benny Lewis even talked about how people had this fear of offending someone by speaking their language, or attempting to speak their language, or messing up their language. And for my own experience, I've had the opposite problem. I think even my cat has some manner of appreciation whenever I try to speak her language. But every other time, even if I only knew like 3 words and they were horribly butchered, people appreciated it. People would go out of their way to say, "Oh, you can also say this. Try forming your tongue this way to make it sound right." One of the reasons I loved going up to Canada for 2 years was there was such a sense of multiculturalism. While I was in Canada, there's a particular area I worked in where, in a 3 block diameter, we'd have one of our own LDS buildings. There was a Sikh Gurdwara, a Buddhist monastery, a Muslim mosque, Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, and a handful of other Christian faiths, Lutheran, Protestant, so on and so forth. But you could walk down the road, and I knew right off the bat at least 2 of them would try to offer me food, which that always gets me. But they were more than happy to say, "Here's something of our culture. Please learn. Please, you're a good human being for wanting to learn, trying to learn." So I got to pick up a handful of it. I can say a phrase, at least a phrase, in probably a dozen languages. And what I loved the most was I was just out tracting, hitting doors, and you could always tell the Indian families before you even hit the driveway. You could just, "Oh, yes, yes," the smell of curry, and not curry powder, because that's their equivalent of buying a store-bought mayo. But each family has their own recipe, each family has their own particular blend, and you can just let the fresh roasted spices permeate through your nose and skin and brain. And so we'd knock on the door, and I'd be excited about this one because they'd open the door and it would just add to like a wonderful smell. And we'd explain who we are, the message we're trying to share, and they'd politely say, "You know what, I have a copy, I've read it, but my responsibilities to my temple are more important." Cool, we respect that. And as they're closing the door, the missionary I was working with myself just used the one phrase in Sikh that we knew, "Sat Sri Akal," which is the English version of God bless you or God be with you. And I'll never forget this huge Indian patriarch, big bushy beard down to his belly button, Sikh turban, and everything. The door just flies right back open. Sat Sri Akal! And he invited us in and fed us. 3 hours later, we got out of that house. He commended us for our faith. He commended us for having the courage to face the failure of most of the doors will be shut in our face. And it was honestly a great experience. We weren't suddenly just the guys in white suits and ties that showed up, tried to share a message, and walked away dejected and disappointed because we didn't get that golden person ready to join the church. It was a matter of we were at least ecumenical. We acted our faith, and they acted their faith, and we exemplified, at least for those 3 hours, some kind of friendship, which was wonderful. But no one had ever said, "How dare you pronounce that wrong to me?" Or "How dare you speak my language in less than perfect skill?" So, getting over that fear and trying to communicate in the language will do more than I think any computer program will do, or book, or a translation, or audio CD will provide. I mean, I'm going to use those things, but I don't believe I'm going to pick up Rosetta Stone and say, this was the key because now I'm fluent. Does not happen. I'm going to stumble through it, and I'm going to be horrible at it. And the one thing I've learned in the past 5 years, whether it was marriage, hobbies, working on a bucket list, anything I wanted to do, is that failure is part of life. I've learned not only to not fear failure, but learning how to love failure. What failure teaches us and provides us, because I think even at a core human idea, not specific to any religion or anything like that, I think we're all imbued with this idea where we want to improve. We want to see something better come from it. But in order to do that, we have to see what doesn't work. And everyone's going to say, insert Thomas Edison quote here. No, I'm not going to do that, because Thomas Edison had a narcissism problem. He liked to steal ideas, claim they were his, and while he did say, "I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb in order to find the one way that did make a light bulb," I think that's a little rose-colored glasses as far as seeing the future. I have to wonder how many times Tesla failed. Just quietly said, okay, here's what did not work. What can I learn from it? What are the factors and elements involved that will produce success in the future? That's the way I'm going to go about it. So I'm starting off with Spanish, not only because that's the one I have the most familiarity with and the most opportunities to practice with, but it's to honor those 2 years I spent in Canada as a missionary, and it really was my first glance at what I had the capacity to do. It was the beginning of me discovering who I was and who I really wanted to be. So it's partially to remember my past, and it's partially laziness, because I still have a full set of the scriptures in Spanish. I still have some vocabulary and can listen in, whether I'm at work or church, and not be totally lost. From there, once I feel like I have a grasp of it, I want to work on American Sign Language, because I have people who've already reached out and said, okay, I want to work on this with you. I want to practice with you. We have the internet and Skype and all these other factors where it can happen. I don't have many people here I can practice with, but here is a relative location. And especially ASL, because I have a nephew that I love dearly, but according to national standards, government standards, educational standards, he's considered retarded because he can't speak the same way. He can kind of grunt and make sounds and noises, but because of something beyond his control, speaking isn't something comfortable for him. But he can sign better and faster than so many other kids his age. He can understand better than where he's at. And that's the thing where my brain's just nagging me, saying there's something I can do. I can be useful in this regard. I can sign. I can learn how to sign more. And that's what I want to do. And then from there, I'm paying some respect to my own weirdness by going to Esperanto, one of the most effective constructed languages. Now, I could choose to go with other constructed languages like Tengwar or Klingon or anything like that, but Esperanto actually can claim some native speakers. There are a few million where that's their primary language. And that's the language that has the greatest culture of outsharing. Here's our language, here's the lifestyle that's created around it, here's what we love about it. Most of the resources are free, and that's what I'm going to be going for. Can I learn the skill without binding myself to a program or a schedule or anything like that? So I plan on making a lot of videos in both English, Spanish, ASL, Esperanto, just so that people can correct me, show me where I'm wrong, improve with me, and talk with me. Because that, I think, is going to be the greatest factor. Hope you all will join me on this. Feel free to comment, throw out whatever other languages you think should be learned, or anything like that. Okay? And I'll see you online.